Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where we look at another member of my classic computer collection. And today we're going to have a look at a machine that IBM brought out into the microcomputer market, designed to keep them ahead of the game. So let's have a look at the IBM AT.
The IBM AT, the AT standing for Advanced Technology, was introduced in 1984 and added a top-end model to IBM's existing four microcomputer offerings, the PC, the XT, the Portable, and the PC Junior. The AT, or the 5170 to use its model number, used Intel's newer, faster 286 microprocessor, one which had the potential for multitasking. It could address up to 16 megabytes of memory and had a 16-bit data bus rather than the 8-bit bus of those earlier machines. It also introduced the 1.2 megabyte high-density floppy drive. Other changes included a battery-backed CMOS memory BIOS and a clock on the motherboard, a redesigned keyboard, which you could disable with a lock on the case, and a larger, faster hard disk. As this ad shows, it was heralded as IBM's most powerful microcomputer yet, and it was priced accordingly. Here you can see my AT. Now, I don't know how many of you have lugged these machines around, but I can tell you they're heavy beasts. This one's fitted with a grey 1.2 megabyte floppy drive, a humongous 20 megabyte internal hard drive, and there's a second 30 megabyte half-height drive tucked under the floppy drive. Video is EGA, which stands for Enhanced Graphics Adapter. This card was released with the AT and was a big step up from the grainy CGA card used with the earlier models. Unfortunately, I don't have an EGA monitor, but even on the older monitors designed for the CGA card, such as this one, the text is much sharper, the graphics are high resolution, and more colours can be displayed. A Model M keyboard completes the picture. This keyboard was released as an option a year or two after the first ATs came out. The original ATs sported a Model F keyboard, which looked more like the PC XT keyboards, although it wasn't compatible with those earlier models. I'd love a Model F keyboard. One appeared here on our main New Zealand auction site about 2 years ago. I put a bid on it but lost the auction. I didn't realise those keyboards were so rare, otherwise I would have bid higher. Looking closely at the front, note the style of the case with that grille and the lights and lock above it. That AT case style was used for many a PC XT and AT Asian clones which found their way here to New Zealand. In fact, my first PC-type computer was an Asian XT clone, and it looked exactly like this, with the exception of the IBM label. I can't remember it being as heavy, though, as this genuine article. Here's what it looks like at the back. A big fan, sockets for the video and main unit power, and two sets of connectors on the right. The one nearest the centre has a serial and parallel port, while the one on the right is the EGA video card. These are not the only cards in the computer, though, as you'll see in a moment. Just a quick view of the label showing it is the genuine article. This is a 240-volt unit, of course. Here's another very IBM feature. Large cork pads on the base. I don't recall seeing these kind of feet on any of the other clone machines, although that's not to say they didn't occur. With the hood off, we can see some impressive hardware. You can clearly see both hard drives here. The middle drive is an original one, and this is the one I've configured as the boot drive. Here is a slightly closer view. It's a humongous drive which makes an equally humongous sound as it spins up. This side view shows the 1.2 megabyte floppy drive. I assume the original IBM ones would have been black. It was common also to have a 360K drive tucked underneath this 1.2 megabyte drive, where that extra hard drive is. That was to help with backwards compatibility with the XT and PC machines. 1.2 megabyte drives could read, but not write to those 360K disks. Well, they could actually write to those 360K disks, but you would have had trouble reading them on a 360K drive. Along with a massive hard disk, this is the other thing that gives the AT its weight, a huge power supply unit. I put a cotton bud, or Q-tip as I think they call them in the US, on the PSU to give you some idea of scale. Squeezed, and I do mean squeezed, between the drives and the PSU are the drive cables. There's not much room in that gap at all. Moving along, we can see the original battery with its grey case. This is disconnected, but you can see I've put a newer one in there on the right. And this shows what kind of board it is. This is a Type 1 board, so it's the original one which runs at 6 MHz. It's faster than the XT or PC, but it could have gone even faster. IBM deliberately limited these first ATs to 6 MHz as they were afraid such a supermicro as the AT might cut into their mini computer market if it was too speedy. Later ATs could run at 8 MHz, however. Here you can see some of the cards. This first one is the disk controller. Not hard to guess that one with all those cables attached. Next is the input-output card with a serial and parallel port. That's a short half-length card. Then there is a 2 MB memory expansion card. This IBM AT then has a total of about 2.5 megabytes on board. This is fine, but if you are considerably younger than me and you're watching this video, you might not realize just how difficult it could be to configure the machine to use that extra memory. At that time, versions of Microsoft's MS-DOS, which was sold with the IBM machines as PC-DOS, were designed to accommodate just 640K for users to play around with. To use any more, third-party software needed to be installed and configured to take advantage of the extra memory. Quarterdeck is one that I can think of. But things were never simple back then. It was the same with expansion cards. Often they had to be manually configured with jumpers or dip switches, so memory addresses, IRQs and DMAs didn't conflict with each other. Plug and play it was not, and it was a golden time for IT hardware gurus who had this esoteric knowledge. Situation really didn't change in the PC world until plug-and-play hardware started to appear in the late 1990s. So getting back to the cards, the last on the sequence there is the EGA card. Now here's a full view of the disk controller card. It's a long card. This photo shows the whole EGA card. And here's another shot of the cards from a different angle. You can see that expansion one's pretty sizable, and the disk controller card is full length. Here's a shot from the back. You can see in this shot the RAM on the motherboard down there on the right. This is weird RAM, as each one is actually two 128K chips sandwiched together. You can see it clearly here in this image. Apparently the Type 2 boards that came out for later ATs use more conventional 256K RAM chips. Look down here and we can see the built-in speaker. Now these machines were business rather than gaming machines, so all you got from those speakers were squeaks or blips or very tinny music. Here's a shot showing the shell of the AT with all its innards removed. I took this picture as I was cleaning it up. It was as dusty as you can see. In fact, it still has a lot of embedded dust on the board, but it's much, much cleaner than it was when I got it. So here's the motherboard, or planar as IBM would call it. Note the empty socket by the keyboard connector. This is with a mass coprocessor for those that want fast number crunching. Well, enough of the photos. Let's hear it firing up. I'll just be quiet during the sequence so you can hear it spin up as it should. So as you can hear, it's not exactly a quiet machine, so let's turn the sound down a little as we go through some software. And I'll do this from a utility called Auto Menu, which was something that was quite popular back in the day. It allowed you or somebody you knew to set up your machine, be it PC AT or an XT, to run software packages without having to go through DOS. So it made it easy for people that weren't that familiar or comfortable with DOS to use their machine. So I've got a list of programs here, so let's just have a look at them. And we'll start off with WordStar. WordStar, of course, was a very popular 8-bit word processing program, and its popularity carried across to the 16-bit machines. So just like 8-bit versions of WordStar, you can see the menus there that are optionally always available on the screen, which makes it easier to use than some other word processors where you had to look in a manual or try and remember the commands. So I've just loaded in a document. You can scroll down the document, see what it's like. Anyone that's used WordStar on an 8-bit machine would be very comfortable with it on something like the IBM AT, or in fact any of the 16-bit micros. In my own workplace back in the day, we didn't use WordStar, we used another word processing package called Xywrite, and this was the one that was sanctioned by the institution, so we all use this. I found it a really handy word processor for a couple of reasons. One is that unless you put unusual control codes in for formatting, it saved the text in straight ASCII, so you could use it as a program editor, for example. And another really good thing about this particular word processing package is that you could fit the editor on a single floppy disk, so you could move around to different machines wherever you were. You could pull out the disk, insert it, boot off it, and you had your copy of Xywrite there to do some editing or some writing, so really handy. On now to the third program that I've got installed on the AT here, and this is Quick Basic 4.5. Now Quick Basic 4.5 is a basic compiler. The AT does have a basic built in, but that's a basic interpreter, so you have to have the source code in order to run your basic program, whereas a basic compiler allows you to write basic in source code and then compile it into an executable, which is a standalone file, a binary file that you could then give to people or sell, and it didn't, people couldn't see the source code or adapt it. Had a really nice editor. It was a program I used to use a lot back in the day when I was writing programs for some of my teaching work. Interestingly, Microsoft included elements of Quick Basic into MS-DOS 5 and above, and they called it QBasic. Essentially it had the editor, didn't have the compiler and linker though, so you couldn't make executable files, but certainly it made editing, writing basic code very, very easy just with the DOS package. I feel I just have to show some EGA games, so here's one of them, Battle Chess. This caused quite a stir when it first came out because the graphics for the time were very, very good, and people were familiar with chess games on older machines. They were usually in 2 dimensions, so seeing something in 3 dimensions was quite unique and rather fun. So what we'll do here is make a few moves, and I'll run it as long as it takes to get a piece captured, so you can see the sorts of drama that goes on when that occurs. So we'll bring our queen out on the diagonal here to this square, and we'll see what the computer does. Just thinking about it. So a knight is forcing his way out there. Now if I leave the queen there, of course she's going to be taken, so what I'll do is I'll move my pawn, advance him a little up here, and the AT is bound to take my queen, so I'll just wait a moment, and the knight should shuffle over to where she is, which indeed he does, and we're ready for battle. Usually a very short battle, and you will hear the rather tinny sound, and you can see our queen is disposed of in a suitably dramatic fashion. I put this one in here as an example of an EGA graphical adventure game. This is an early Sierra game. My two daughters loved this game and they played it incessantly when they were very young. So in a way I've put this in here for them as well. So Rebecca and Judith, if you can see this, hopefully this will bring back some nostalgic memories for you. Now with large hard disks, file management could get very complicated, and quite frankly MS-DOS, or PC-DOS in this case, wasn't really up to the task. So there was a number of third-party programs that you could buy that were essentially disk managers, and this is one of them. This is Xtree Pro. So it enabled you to see the directories that your files were organized under and those files, and you could select the files or select the directories or select the disks even, and do a number of things with them. They were very popular. So this shows us PC-DOS, the famous C prompt. Most people watching this video will be familiar with this operating system. And there you can see we've got PC-DOS 3.1 installed on this machine, which was a pretty typical configuration for the AT when it first came out. I've got two manuals for the machine. Both of them are IBM manuals. And those of you that own an IBM manual or have seen one of these manuals before, you'll know that they're written in a fairly straightforward style. There's no whimsy about them, like there are with some of the home computer manuals, for example. But they contain good stuff and mostly the information you'd want to know. So this is the guide to operations. This is the manual for PC-DOS. It's in a cardboard box like the other ones. It's a white folder. And inside this white folder it's actually got several other booklets. There's this application setup here that contains information you want about that particular process. There's the reference section, which is the largest part of the manual. That's the bit that's in the ring binder. At the back we've got a user guide, which slightly shorter. There's a quick reference card if you want to look up some of the commands. And here's an interesting thing. There is a card here that tells you about the 1.2 megabyte drives and 360k drives and what you shouldn't write to what. So that's there to let people know that those disks aren't necessarily interchangeable depending on what drive you use them in. So quite a neat and tidy package, like most of these IBM offerings. They look quite nice, stacked up, sitting next to your computer, just like this, as you can see. So that's the IBM AT. It was a significant machine in that it introduced the 16-bit ISA bus, which became a standard for many years. The machine was cloned extensively, although the 286 chip never really fulfilled its promise as a multitasking chip, and there were a number of reasons for that. Well, two main reasons. One was that there were problems in using the chip for doing that, even though potentially it was capable of it, and it could be used for multitasking. There were certain issues. And the second was that PC-DOS, MS-DOS really wasn't designed for that sort of operating environment. And it really wasn't until the later ICs, like the 386, when you combined it with something like Windows 3.1, that you could really start to get multitasking working, at least on a common desktop machine. These models are rare in New Zealand, and I'm certainly glad I've got one for the collection. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at the IBM AT. So that's all for this video. In the meantime, keep well, and we'll see you in the next one.